Well, we got it. Nick Kyrgios, Rafa Nadal, they will play fourth round of the Australian Open. I would say that was the number one thing us tennis fans wanted. Out of all the potential round of 16 matchups, that's the one we could have hoped for the most. We've got it, baby. But before we even had it for sure, after Rafa had won, but Nick still hadn't won his match yet, the media was already asking Rafa about this potential matchup. Take a listen to this excellent question.
Rafa, if it is Nick Kyrgios, obviously there's been a lot of history between you two. Do you like Nick? Do you get on with him? Do you like Nick? Do you get on with him?
If I what?
Do you like Nick Kyrgios? Do you get on with him?
A quick tip for the tennis media types out there who find themselves in the press rooms. Don't confuse Rafa with two very different ways of saying the same thing in English. You know, one is pretty straightforward. Do you like Nick? The other is like more of an Aussie thing. Do you get on well with him, mate? And I'm pretty sure Rafa heard get on with and was thinking get it on. And we've seen this from Rafa before where people ask him questions in English really fast and he thinks you're trying to catch him in some kind of trap, getting him to say yes to some kind of weird sexual thing. So Rafa will have none of that. But don't worry, Rafa eventually figured out what they were trying to ask him, and here was the answer. Rafa, do you like Nick?
I don't know. I don't know him personally, honestly.
I don't know. But Nick, on the other hand, and to be fair to Rafa, he would go on to say, look, I like what is good for the sport, what makes the sport bigger, not what makes the sport smaller. When Nick is being crazy, he's making the sport smaller. When Nick is playing best and playing with great passion and great feelings, he is making the sport bigger, and I like these kind of people that make the sport bigger, no? So, okay, Rafa didn't totally diss on Kyrgios, and Nick and Rafa have both said basically, I don't really know the other one personally. So, okay, it's nothing like that. It's nothing personal. But the surprising thing to me and to everyone so far is, when is Nick going to snap and be the old Nick? Because so far he has been new Nick. Even when they asked him about playing Rafa after he had won his epic 5-set match over Karen Khachanov, and Nick said, Rafa is possibly the greatest player of all time. And he said he has a lot of respect for Rafa. This is definitely a lot different than he's like super salty, mate. Take a listen. This is what Nick Kyrgios said. I don't have the clip of Nick Kyrgios, but I have it written right here, and I will read it to you in the style of Nick Kyrgios. After Wimbledon, mate, I lost. Got beaten by the better player. I shook his hand, looked him in the eye, and I said, too good, mate. Regardless, if we don't like each other or whatever, I think there's a layer of respect. I mean, he's one of the greatest of all time. So everyone is wondering, how much longer will this last? And will it possibly last long enough to see Nick Kyrgios somehow beat Rafa Nadal at the 2020 Australian Open? I'm seriously wondering, and Mr. Goat, who just sauntered off over there, he pointed out to me, Mr. Goat, the talking tennis cat, he said, well, Nick already did kind of have an outburst. You can't count the thing with the hand. His hand was bleeding. The towel was bloody. Nick was right. He was right. He should have went harder on that umpire for such nonsense. Today on the show, we'll talk about Rafa and Nick Kyrgios in the matchup. We also have the rest of the matchups in the top round of 16. Also, we're only about 3 or 4 hours away from the bottom half of the draw's round of 16 matches. We'll talk about the conditions and how they're going to be a little bit different in the different matches. We'll talk about some of those matchups. And also, we've got a few comments, and that's probably all we will have time for on today's edition of Coffee Break Tennis. So like I was saying in the beginning of the show, Nick Kyrgios, this is a very different Nick. You will see from the thumbnail is Virtuous Saint Nick, because I'm just stunned about how, obviously, he hit some reverse tweeners, a couple trick shots, and he did blow up on the umpire, as Mr. Goat, the talking tennis cat, pointed out on his way out of the building. Nick, put it on the screen, Nick had blood on his hand. And here, take a listen for yourself. This is Nick yelling at the umpire, talking about why he had no right to give him a time violation.
I told the ball kid not to touch it. That's all I said. Boy, you stupid? Can you not see? Well, take it back then. Why do I get a time violation? My hand's bleeding.
This And also another time violation on Nick before he served, which I get it. That's the one thing Nick really has a right to get angry about because he takes the least amount of time. Rafa constantly breaks that rule, yet doesn't get called on it. Nick will occasionally, like in this incident where he's taking time to towel blood off of his hand and to warn, if you heard Nick, he's warning the ball kid, don't touch the towel, there's blood on it. I'll get the towel from now on so you don't got to get my blood on you, which is a kind of a nice thing for Nick to do. Maybe he overreacted a little bit, but compared to his normal blow-ups where there's no reason to be upset, this one I can understand, and I think we can safely say Nick is still on uncharted territory. He's never won a match like this, an epic over 4-hour-long 5-set match. That's uncharted territory. And I've never seen him so focused and so patient in the rallies. Obviously, he had to have the trainer come out. It seems like it might be something that's going to be okay. The big question is, will Nick recover well enough to beat Rafa? I think with this win over Khachanov, Nick has proved that if he stays focused and he digs deep, he will have enough to go 5 with Rafa and get the win in the end. But now the big question is, can he do it 2 matches in a row? I'm not so sure about that. I picked Nick in my draw at the beginning of the tournament. In the draw show, I picked Nick to go all the way to the final. A lot of people think that's crazy, but if he beats Rafa, you got to give him a chance to do it. And I still think he can beat Rafa, but obviously it's a big question. We don't know how well Nick is going to recover. Nick is not known for being great at recovery. Then again, he's also not known for digging deep and showing heart, which he definitely did in his victory over Karen Khachanov. So I think all the tennis fans are pretty excited about this matchup and pretty excited to see. I will not forget, Roger Federer said in the last year or so, he said, Nick Kyrgios can beat anyone and everyone, and he knows it. So we've all known this about Nick Kyrgios, and we've all been waiting. And hey, Roger knows better than anyone, shouldn't he? Shouldn't he? He understands this sport. Real quick. Oh, take a look at this. This is also the last time Nick got called on a time violation, and he didn't have a blow up. He didn't really yell at the umpire much, but he did mock Rafa. Take a look. Doing the ears, doing the shorts, all that stuff. Do you think Rafa caught that? I wonder if Rafa knows that happened. Does it get under Rafa's skin? This is obviously, I talked about in the last video, playing for the love of the game, and all that stuff is important. But we do really like when 2 players don't like each other. It is very entertaining. I think it's good for the sport when they don't like it. Although it seems like they have a mutual respect now. I'm not going to go out and say they hate each other, but there's no denying that it adds a level of interest. A level of intrigue to this matchup. Maybe Rafa does know, actually, because take a listen to this. Apparently, Rafa sees all. Rafa doesn't miss a thing. Take a listen.
How much, if any, did you watch Roger's match with John
I
yesterday?
watched almost everything.
And I love Rafa's answer on, it was a 5-set, 4-hour match. It's not right to analyze the whole performance of one player just based on 6 points at the end of the match.
The tiebreaker, and then suddenly the last 6 points, he didn't make any mistake.
Honestly, it's not a big. I don't think it's. My feeling is an analysis that is not correct because when you are 8-4 in the tiebreak, of course, if you win 6 points, it's obvious that you didn't make an enforced error. But at the same time, have been a good match for Millman. I don't want to analyze the match for the last 6 points, honestly.
I love Rafa there stating the obvious to some of these people in the press room. Do they? I'm not gonna say anything, but you know what I'm trying to say here. So some of these people amaze me with their questions and their lack of knowledge. I loved Roger's response in his presser yesterday when he said, look, just because somebody's jumping up and down on the other side of the net doesn't mean they're going to beat me. If you could say, to be fair to that reporter, it's not the worst question ever, you could say something like, well, if Millman had double faulted like 2 or 3 times in the last 6 points, something crazy like that, then you could start saying like, oh, looks like maybe he choked. I don't think that was necessarily it. I think Rafa's right. You got to look at the whole body of work. He played great. And then, of course, Rafa put a cap on it. Take a listen to this.
Well, anything could happen, but Federer is Federer.
Federer is Federer. Can't say it better than Rafa. All right, take a look. This is what we got for a round of 16. Nadal versus Kyrgios, of course. Dominic Thiem versus Gael Monfils. A quick thing on the Dominic Thiem match. Good conditions for him. The ball was exploding. Good conditions. If you watched Rafa, it was almost unwatchable. He crushed Pablo Carreño Busta. And the conditions were a big thing, plus the comfort level of playing Mr. PCB. But the ball was exploding. It was very hot. Not like that at all today for the next matches. Not like that tomorrow for Rafa and Nick Kyrgios. I wonder what that's going to do to Rafa. It may hurt him more than it'll hurt Kyrgios. But at times I felt like it was hurting Kyrgios more than it was hurting Khachanov, mainly because it took so much off of the Kyrgios serve. But I don't know. This is a really tough one to call. I think, honestly, truth is Kyrgios will have a shot to beat Rafa either way. But maybe Rafa losing sting on his forehand is going to be ultimately more harm to him than anything that's going to happen to Nick. Nick was brilliant at coming into the net. Dominic Thiem was so far back with Taylor Fritz. Dominic Thiem was manhandling Taylor Fritz for the most part. But Taylor Fritz was able to win a lot of points on serve just because of Dominic Thiem in these crazy positions way back at the wall like it's a clay court. I don't know why Dominic Thiem keeps doing that. He was winning just fine. Against Monfils, I feel like Dominic Thiem should have not too much problem. Of course, the conditions are going to be slow, so Monfils could drag things out and make things last a long time. I was pretty impressed with how Monfils played. I thought Gulbis would maybe be able to give Monfils trouble. Bottom line there was Gulbis' forehand was just too erratic. No surprise that the match ended with Gulbis hitting some incredible backhands to save match points. And then finally, on the third times the charm match point, I believe Gulbis hit a forehand long, and there was a lot of forehand errors and just not a lot of good stuff happening with the forehand. And plus another thing, a big thing with Gulbis was he never would come to net when he had a chance to finish Monfils. With someone who covers the court that well, you got to go up there and put it out of reach of them. Otherwise, you're just giving them a chance to keep the rallies going. I didn't like that. Medvedev basically had a freebie. What's his name? Papirin, that guy, he was hurt. He could barely move. I thought he was going to quit halfway into the match, but credit to the guy for sticking it out. But Medvedev basically got like a heated practice session. Stan maybe will have a shot to take down Medvedev. Now that Stan... I thought Isner would really be tough, but apparently Isner has this stress fracture in the foot again. Same thing that happened to him in Miami last year when he lost to Federer. Stan had to go 5 sets before his match with Isner. I think this match with Isner is a game changer for Stan because if he had to have another long, rough match trying to break Isner's serve, it could take several sets. Could have easily been a 4 or 5 set match for Stan to come through there. The fact that he gets the walkover after one pretty easy set because Isner really couldn't move much. The fact that Stan has that, I think that changes everything for Wawrinka now. That gave him a chance to go from a 5-setter to an easy break to where now he's going to go out there with Medvedev and feel fresh enough to have a chance. I think if he had to play 2 long matches back-to-back, he wouldn't have been able to do it. I give him a shot now. Sasha Zverev, who we got to credit is serving really well, but he's also, he was serving against that Igor, the big Igor guy who was not a good returner. And then he was serving against Verdasco, who's got the knees taped up and just looking kind of sluggish and not like himself. Verdasco's getting up there. He's pretty old. So I like Rublev to beat Sasha Zverev, but I think Sasha Zverev getting to the 4th round without dropping a set, we got to give some credit to Sasha Zverev. So I give him a shot, actually, to come through to the quarterfinals, which would be a great result. And then he would likely have to play Medvedev or possibly Stan Wawrinka. None of them, neither one of those things would shock me at all. Medvedev playing great, finding it, even if Stan comes out pretty hot, and then Stan hitting a super high level, and Medvedev being like, oof, I haven't seen anything like this at the tournament yet. Nothing will surprise me at this point. Before we move on, I just look at Thiem and Monfils, and I think about how Thiem is going to be able to take care of Monfils, but I'm thinking about how explosive his ball was in those hot conditions that they had yesterday. Take a listen to Dominic Thiem himself talking about the conditions.
I feel great with the conditions. I feel good, but they're changing so much because the weather is so inconsistent here. I mean, it plays completely different when it's 35 degrees than when it's 20 degrees, and it can change within hours. So maybe this is one of the tournaments where we have to adapt the most, but court speed and balls are completely fine for me.
A lot of people doubt me when I talk about the conditions, act like I'm making it up or something, but I'm telling you it's a major factor. As Dominic Thiem pointed out in that clip, things can change very dramatically in just an hour or two. So with that said, let's take a look. And by the way, when Nadal and Kyrgios play, you know it's going to be a night match. It's going to be very slow conditions, something to think about. Let's look at the matches that are happening today, tonight, depending on where in the world you are. If you're in Melbourne at the Australian Open, 1 p.m., we've got Raonic and Cilic. Raonic should be fresher than Cilic. I give him the edge. I think it'll be a tough match. Potentially, that you could see that being a 4-5 set crazy match with some tiebreakers. 74 degrees Fahrenheit and 62% humidity. This is going to be much slower conditions than what we saw with Rafa and Pablo Correa Busta, and also with Dominic Thiem and Taylor Fritz. Much slower conditions now. Then we go to 2 p.m. Joker and Schwarty D. 75 degrees Fahrenheit goes up a little. 60% humidity goes down a little. These will be the fastest conditions of the day. They got a couple hours of a window there. Still not super fast conditions, but faster than what it'll be, say, for Roger, who plays at night again. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. I expect to see Djokovic and Diego Schwartzman have a little trouble hitting winners through each other because they're both just such great defenders. The question is who's going to be able to find it first and who's going to be able to sustain it better. Of course, we're going to go with Djokovic, but I do think Diego Schwartzman can make that match very interesting. I will say Schwartzman can get a set. I'll give him a set. I think Djokovic wins in 3 or 4, though. Tennis Sandgren and Fabio Fognini, that's the most shocking one out of all of our round of 16. I don't think anything else would surprise us more than those two guys being there. You could say Sandgren's done it in the last couple of years. He's done it. Fabio Fognini, we know how talented he is, so he can always put something together. And, of course, that was a section of the draw where there really wasn't a whole lot going on. Anyways, so we're not too shocked knowing that. That's 4 p.m., Temperature drops to 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity starts going up, climbing to 64%. If I had to pick, as a Federer fan, I want to say Sandgren comes through because I think it's a better match for Federer. But I never bet against Fognini. If he puts his mind to it, he can do anything. That's probably going to be a pretty wild match. And then finally, 7 p.m., the women will play. And it's going to be Ash Barty and Alison Riska. She's most known for always having really good results on grass. With these slower conditions, it's going to be slow, but it's going to be very low. It's going to be faster than clay. So I would say that could be a very long match. So because of that, I'm going to say Federer is going to start likely at 9 p.m. That's when Federer is going to hit the court with Marty Fucsovics, and we're going to have 65 degrees. So from the time Djokovic starts his match, 10 degrees drop off on the weather, and we're going to shoot up 16% all the way to 76% humidity. Now, let's say Roger has another horrible long 5-set match. If they go all the way to midnight, again, if Roger does again, like with Millman, that temp is going to drop even further to 61 degrees Fahrenheit. That's legit cold and very slow conditions. And the humidity is going to go up another 5% to 81%. If they only go 2 hours, by 11 p.m., it's going to go to 62 and 79, which is pretty much the same thing. It's going to be very slow conditions for Roger. Roger did play Marty Fucsovics right here exactly 2 years ago in the round of 16 at the Australian Open, the 2018, the year Roger would go on to win, and his last major, actually, number 20. So, yeah, Roger has that experience of beating Fucsovics 2 years ago, but let me tell you a couple things about Fucsovics. One, that was the first year Fucsovics was a top 100 player. I mean, he won Junior Wimbledon not that long ago. He's younger than he looks. He's only been playing on tour for a few years, really, and 2018 was his first top 100 serious year. Roger got him. They still, I think they had a tie break in that match in the second set. Other than that, I think Roger went 6-1 in the third. The thing about Martin Fucsovics is this Hungarian guy, he really feels right now like he's playing the best tennis of his life. He is in a different place than 2 years ago, and this could be more challenging. Now, I don't expect him to push Federer to 5 sets like we saw with John Millman. I do expect Fucsovics to be very consistent like John Millman, and I expect Federer to have these conditions where it's harder to hit balls past your opponent, which could get tricky. I'm not guaranteeing that Federer comes through in 3. I guarantee you if he does come through in 3, he's going to feel pretty good about his chances of winning this whole tournament, about winning the Australian Open. It's important that he doesn't have 2 back-to-back 5-set matches, is my opinion here. So unless, when Roger did it before, don't forget, he did it in the round of 16. Then he had an easy quarterfinal. This is 2017 I'm talking about. And then Roger had a 5-set semifinal with Wawrinka and a 5-set final with Nadal. It is okay to play 2 5-setters back-to-back if the second one is the final and you don't have to play again to win the tournament. That worked out. I don't think Roger needs that to happen here. I will say I don't expect Fucsovics to bring as much heat off the ground because, as I said before, Millman was really pushing it. He was kind of redlining his game and still playing very consistently. You would expect him to miss a lot as big as he was hitting the ball for him. Fucsovics, on the other hand, maybe he will redline the game, but that's a little bit of what he did. He made too many unforced errors a couple of years ago. So we'll see. Can he redline his game like Millman did? Maybe he will try that. I think what we're more likely to see is Fucsovics has a little bit more variety. We're going to see more slice backhands. We're going to see more serve and volley and coming to the net. But again, as Roger pointed out, after playing Millman, the conditions were so slow that no one was coming to net. He said Millman never served and volleyed, and Roger only did it a handful of times. Can't remember what number of times he said he did it. But we have seen Fucsovics mostly playing in the day with faster conditions than this, so I don't know if Fucsovics is going to be ready for what it's going to feel like in that stadium. And we have seen him come to net a lot and finish up there a lot. We've also seen him demonstrate in that match with Shapovalov. If Federer decides he's going to get a lot of points at the net, which might be a good thing for Federer to do in rallies, not necessarily serve and volley. If he's having a hard time hitting past the guy, Fucsovics has pretty good defense. We might see Roger go to the net a lot. The problem was every time Shapo went to the net, it seemed like Fucsovics would come up with some really good, really quality passing shots. So we shall see. Let's do a couple of comments and then we'll get out of here. I will be watching Raonic and Cilic and Joker and Shorty D, at least for a set or two, and then I will go to bed right away and try to wake up and catch. I'm thinking I got a 6 a.m. wake up time, which means I'll probably be catching Federer and Fucsovics with the start of the second set. A couple comments really quick. Got to read this one. Andre M says, "Hi, Matt. I knew Roger wouldn't lose on my birthday. He was watching the Millman match on his birthday. Who wants to have a heart attack on their birthday?" So I just wanted to say happy birthday to you, sir. Andre says, "He wouldn't do that to me, Federer losing on my birthday. All kidding aside, the match was fantastic. I aged 2 years and 4 hours. When people ask me over the years, what did I do on my birthday in 2020? I'll show them this match and tell them that I proudly stayed by Roger's side for 4 hours, heart and soul, till the end. That is highly commendable." Going on to Leon. If he keeps the aggressive double fault away, talking about Sasha Zverev, and I think we got to credit Sasha Zverev. He's done enough good stuff. I think his draw has helped him, but still, you can have opportunities in the draw and still mess it up. Big time. We've seen people do it. Like Sasha Zverev. If he keeps Sasha Zverev the aggressive double fault away with his newfound forehand and massive serve, he can be a serious threat. He's solid so far. Don't recall if he ever advanced to a fourth round without dropping a set. I think it's safe to say he hasn't. I'll be glad to see him make it into the final, even lifting the trophy. A man who is about to lose $3 million. More credit we got to give Sasha Zverev is he says if he wins the tournament, which is a long shot, he'll give all of the money to fight the bushfires in Australia, which is a very nice gesture, even though I don't think he's going to win it. It's him after all. We never know which Sasha will show up. And a quick thing about that, not to take anything away from the very generous gesture, and also, isn't Sasha giving $10,000 for every match he wins? That's one of the most generous ones we've heard of all. I think Isner probably takes the cake saying he's giving 25% of all prize money. Unfortunately, he lost kind of earlier than I thought he would. But I want to point one thing out, not to take anything away, but I just want to make sure everyone understands. If Sasha Zverev were to win and give away all of his prize money, all of his sponsors, he probably already has it in his contract that he gets a bonus. He could probably get the same amount of money, if not more, maybe a little less. But I would think from all the Sasha Zverev sponsors and little contract deals he probably has, wouldn't be surprised to see that he gets like $1 million bonus for winning a major right away, right off the bat. And of course, if he wins a major, I mean, to these guys, I think it's more valuable than the money when you're already making pretty darn good money. You know, the guy did win the World Tour Finals. They got a big paycheck too. All right, hit the music. Last thing. Take a look at this. A lot of people were talking about this. I meant to get to it in the last show and I forgot. Millman was rubbing the ball in his chest. Remember Marty Fish used to do this all the time, but I always thought Marty Fish was drying the ball, because it seemed like that part of his chest where he would rub it was like the one part Marty Fish wouldn't get any sweat on his shirt. Jind Kid on the Instagram pointed out that Patrick McEnroe had segs. A lot of people are asking if this is if this is against the rules, and honestly, I didn't know. Jind Kid says Patrick McEnroe was saying Greg Ruzetsky once did this to him in a match, and and he complained to the umpire, Patty Mack did, and then they made Ruzetsky stop. And then Monica, I thought should point out that she pointed out Roger, if he had seen this, isn't the type to say anything. He's above that. I've heard it was called slicking to make the ball go faster. Other people are saying it's fluffing up the ball to make it go slower. I would think you're adding humidity to the ball and you're going to slow it down. I have seen some rule book things from ITF and USTA. People have put up on Twitter saying it's against the rules. I don't know. Who cares? Roger Federer won the match. All right, we will be back tomorrow. We'll talk about all the matches that are happening tonight, and I have a sneaky suspicion that we may be talking a good bit about Kyrgios and Rafa even more tomorrow before that awesome match happens. See ya!